They're going after the wrong thing, as we have gone after the wrong thing after we got equal opportunity in this country and laws passed to protect our citizenship and our rights of citizenship. We started celebrating, having a good time, playing, laughing, dancing, getting high, and we forgot what God has done for us over all these many generations. God has permitted us to be used and abused more than any other soul of a human being. God has permitted that soul of the African people, African American people, or the African people, to be used and abused. But the God that permits that is obligated to do justice by everything. So in the measure that He has allowed us to be deprived, He must award us, and at least that measure or greater. So when we look at the sad history, as those sad turns of events in our life, beginning with the first one, putting us upon slave ships and bringing us here to be slaves as property of others, and following that at the terrible events in our life, when we look at those events and see the damage to our psyche, the damage to our life as human beings, and the threat to our future as human beings, when we see that and realize that we have overcome that, we're still here, we're still human, and we still perform an very excellent way, men and women, that says to us that God has not yet finished rewarding us. God is not through with us. Freedom and equal opportunity here, that's just the necessary situation or the necessary condition for us to begin doing what God has formed us for. And I say formed us. We are no more Africans like the Africans of the continent of the motherland of Africa. We are new people. We have a new mind. We have a new spirit. We have new sensitivities as a people. We have a brand new ethos as a race. So we are different. We are different. We are different in the abstract picture, and we are different in the physical picture. We are not abstractly the same. That is, our mentality is different, spirit different, sensitivity is different, aspirations different, humor different. We are not Africans anymore of the motherland. We are Africans of this land. New Africans. New Africans.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. With Allah's name, excuse me, we seek refuge with Allah from the rejected enemy, Satan. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We give our complete faith and our trust in Him, Allah, the mighty, the majestic, who has no partners or associates in the rule or the run of the heavens of the earth. And we believe that Muhammad, the last prophet, is the prophet of God, the messenger to all humanity. Again, we greet the believers and the people, the audience of Assalamu alaikum, that is peace be unto you, and welcome to New Africa Talks, coming to you live from Harlem, New York, an internet program dedicated to the promoting of the concept of New Africa. Imam W.D. Muhammad's vision and direction for Muslim African American community life. My name is Hakeem Sabri, and I will be your host this afternoon. This program has as its focus for the students of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Let me repeat that again. This program has as its focus the students of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And what we mean by students are those who identify Imam Muhammad as their teacher and their leader. We want to give a brief statement by Imam Muhammad regarding what a student is. Actually, two brief statements. Imam Muhammad says, a student is an intellect that is willing to be taught. But specifically, we're talking about students of Imam Muhammad, a specific teacher, a specific leader, So we want to give you this quote too from our leader, Imam Mohammed, at a Ramadan session in 2004, explaining how he gives the example of what a student is or how we should see his students. Imam Muhammad says, "So we have many of you who are my students. You write down my talks. You try to get all you can get from me, and you take it and you put it in your collection, and you make it first among the reading materials. I know you do. You put nothing above it except Allah and His Messenger. I know that, and that is what you have to do, and that is what I have to have you do. I know you treasure it. You take it in and put it with your collection. You don't lose the harvest. Praise be to Allah." So that is the definition of a student. And actually, if we understood Islamic student and teacher relationships, that is the definition of all students of any teacher, if we understand and we know our religion. Our topic today will be the Reconstructing the African American, the whole title is this: Up, You Mighty People. The Reconstructing the African American Family After Slavery, Black Nationalism, or Al-Islam. Briefly, I wanted to state about the statement, the opening statement. We're not making it a challenge. We're giving you information about what we as a people accepted as a help for us as a people, as a group, for what it did for us, what was the benefits of it, what was it lacking. And we're speaking about Black nationalism because we know we don't have any lackings or anything of non-benefit in the religion of Al-Islam. That's what we believe as Muslims. Others may believe that different. You may believe there's things lacking, but we don't. And we're Muslims, but we're also African Americans. And we appreciate Black nationalism for what it did, but we also want to have insight and information about, from our speakers of how they saw Black nationalism assist us and what they think lacked in the Black nationalist teaching that Al-Islam came to correct and help. I also wanted to mention that we had two speakers scheduled for the program. One of them is here, thank Allah, Sister Qadar, but one of them isn't. Imam Sulaimaan Hamid, he was in travel. I didn't get to, get the information quick enough or consistent enough. He thought the program was tomorrow instead of today, but that happens. But he still wants to do the program. So I was speaking with the host, Mujahideen Mohammed, and we're going to try to schedule 2 Saturdays from now. I think this is 7th, might be the 10th, I think the 10th, but we'll have the flyers up anyway. And Imam Sulaimaan will address the same topic, Up, You Mighty People, Reconstructing the African American Family Life After Slavery, Black Nationalism, Al-Islam. So today we just have our Sister Qadar, and I'm going to basically give her a short bio and then bring her on, and she's going to give a brief presentation, and then we're going to have some questions from myself and the questions from the audience that they can type in, and they can relay the questions to us and Sister Coral so she can answer the questions. Coral is the founder of Mothermind, a platform for promoting sustaining and enhancing the health of women, families, and home. She is also a writer and the author of For Sakinah, a Muslim woman's reflections on being a bride, a student of America's Imam W.D. Mohammed since converting to the Islamic faith at the age of 12. Coral seeks to further the essential Abrahamic Islamic message that there is but one God, one creation, and one human family. She and her husband, Abdul Latif Qadar, of 40 years, have 7 children and are proud grandparents. So without further ado, we're going to bring on Sister Qadar. And we greet you, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you.
I know you already have a presentation regarding the topic, and you heard my background about how we saw Black nationalism and such, but it's brief. I don't know if people, I get excited about hearing people's stories growing up or coming to the Nation of Islam, and yours is one of those stories. At 12 years old, that is, you're not even at, 13, you're not even a teenager yet. That's phenomenal. if you can just give, I guess, a brief of history of you coming in, why, and then, you know, edge your way into um, the topic.
Well, let me just thank you, first of all, for creating this wonderful platform. We need a lot of this. We need a lot of this kind of discourse, and we need it to be packaged and disseminated into the medicine that hopefully will help a lot of people. And that kind of segues into why I came into converted to the Islamic faith at such a young age. But I have to say, I wasn't the only teenager that came in at a young age. I grew up in a very kind of scholarly environment. My mother was a scholar and was a student of Buddhism, Christian Science. She was let's just say, a student of world religions, and kind of incorporated silent unity also. Incorporated whatever she thought could bring us a better understanding of our purpose. And when we were younger, we asked our mother what religion we were, and she said she didn't want to impose a doctrine on us, that she wanted us to make that decision for ourselves. However, the only criteria was that God was not a man. So we really liked the Nation of Islam. My uncle had joined the nation in the 60s, and we liked the culture of the Nation of Islam. But the fact that this image of Master Farad Muhammad was there, kind of automatically, if you know, somebody says you can do whatever, but just not this one thing, so that you're not going to breach that one thing, you know. So we couldn't breach that one thing, but we followed the nation. We, you know, as children growing up in the 60s, it was a kind of a difficult to see all the imagery on television, what was going on all over the country. Growing up in the Northeast, we didn't see it as much, even though you did see it. You did see in Howard Beach, and when they integrated Rosedale, you did see this, but you didn't see it as vividly as you saw it in the South. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was like a security blanket for us. We knew that there was somebody among our people that was really not scared, you know. And so that was good. But as I said, we followed the nation. And then even before Imam W.D. Mohammed came into office, one of my brothers had a good friend that was in high school with him, that was in the nation, that was kind of keeping us abreast of what was going on with the nation. And my brother was almost getting ready to join. But when we found out that Warthuddin Muhammad said that Master Farad was not God, then my brother joined the nation the next day. He was 15. And I wanted to join. I figured when I turned 18, I would join, you know. But I hesitated because I thought I was going to have a whole lot of fun, you know. I wanted to have all my fun first. And I hesitated. And then my brother brought home a Quran. And when he brought home the Quran, he left it and left the house. And I snuck and started reading it. And as I started reading it, I was devastated that I had read it. I was like, oh God, please. I was telling myself, pretend you didn't read this, you know. You don't want to see it. So I would read some verses, and I mean, I felt the presence of God speaking to me. And I would read a little bit and say, just put this down, forget it, pretend you didn't read it. And then I'd read a little bit more. And I grew up in the church. I grew up in a lot of different church environments, but I had never had that kind of authentic spiritual experience. And to be honest with you, it was like a death. I thought it was going to be the worst thing to happen to me. I just decided, okay, I'll be a Muslim. I can't deny this is the word of God. And I thought I would be living in a casket for the rest of my life. And when my brother came home, I was so despondent. I said, "Oh, I guess I'm going to be a Muslim." Ugh. And he was happy. But I have to say that I soon met people like your family, young people like, and like your parents, your mother, and I just talked to Sister Victoria Mohammed this morning, and so many, and the young people, the children that I encountered from the Nation of Islam were so bright and so enthusiastic about. By that time, Imam Mohammed had actually come into leadership. When I first, like December of 1974 is when we were first looking. But by the time I read the Quran, it was April of 1975, and the young people were just so enthusiastic and so kind. And the friends that I made, I mean, it was like, I thought I was getting ready to have some fun, and I didn't know what fun was. So that's my story. And I have to say that I grew up in a neighborhood that was very, kind of like the old-fashioned, when you hear about the old-fashioned African-American neighborhoods, very similar to that. A lot of good families that would speak to the children and, you know, were more engaged than I think we have a tendency to be. I grew up in New York, and my family, even though they came out of Harlem and Brooklyn, eventually built a house in Queens. And I was in a neighborhood where all I knew was two-parent families, because these were the families that had come out of Brooklyn and they were very stable. And so that was the norm for me, seeing, you know, two parents raising their children. Most of the mothers were homemakers. Most of the mothers were home with their children. And that was normal to me. That was, you know, so the kind of Islamic, the Muslim culture was very normal to me. I decided to pick a profession because growing up in the 70s, that was, you know, it became the kind of the expected thing. What do you want to be? You couldn't just be a homemaker and a mother and a wife, even though that's what I was looking forward to. I was very excited about walking into the lifestyle that I saw all the beautiful women around me having. And I just loved these women. They were all, you know, I was the only one being kind of raised by a single mother with her grandparents. So I just loved these women, and they were so good to me. And I always thought that was going to be my inheritance. But then in the 70s, you had to pick. So I said, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a midwife, or I'm going to be. But when I met the Muslim community, I felt so comfortable, because the Muslim culture was the same culture that I grew up in. And it's interesting because I always find it, you know, this paradigm where in the 70s, you had this paradigm where they were saying, you know, women, we can get out there and we can work just like the men. But for African-American women, we were doing that. The slavery experience did not afford us any other opportunity. So that wasn't, you know, the liberation movement didn't liberate us. It kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really just supported. I'm not saying that it wasn't valuable and important for the women who needed that, but that's not really what we needed. So the movement that came out of the Nation of Islam, where the message behind the stage was protect our women. That was the message that we needed for our development, in my opinion. And the Nation of Islam provided that. So the discussion being, it's interesting because I was looking at the language of the topic, Black nationalism or al-Islam. And I thank you for taking the time to really talk about what it means to be a student of Imam Mohammed, because one of my sons said that in his view, sometimes the students of Imam Mohammed don't realize that Imam Mohammed was a great surgeon. He was a great physician, a great surgeon. And he spent many years training his students to perform these these surgeries. And he said, but what we tend to do sometimes is to go to the conferences to discuss the surgical technique, but we never go out and do the surgery. You know what I mean? So I have to say, one of the most impactful things on me becoming a Muslim, and I'm sorry I left this out, was the couriers, the brothers who were on Jamaica Avenue, on Atlantic Avenue, you know, all over New York City, all the time. When you went to school in the morning, when you came home from school or work in the afternoon, those brothers were out selling those Mohammed Speaks papers, not just giving information to the community about what was going on in the nation, but they were engaging with the community, just like a surgeon has to do when you make an assessment. You can't know what the patient needs if you never talk to the patient. If you don't ask the patient what's hurting you, how are you doing? And the couriers, the FOI, the fruit, the brothers that were out there, they weren't just hawking papers. I want you to know, some of them were so skillful at connecting with the community. I think about Khalid Amin, who was dear, dear, dear to me and to my family. I know that, I think you all interviewed him recently. There's another brother, Sulaimaan Ahmed. I love these brothers so much. Bashir Ali, Wahid Mohammed. I could just go on. And as a youngster, these brothers, if you watch the way they talk to the people in the community, they never talk down to the people. I don't care if they were strung out on heroin. They always spoke to them with respect and with love. And even the women, they had a way of mothering the community. You know, you think about the prophet, peace be upon him, being referred to as the Ummi prophet, the mother prophet. These brothers had that naturally. They intuitively knew how to mother the community. I think about Sulaimaan Ahmed, who, if he saw a sister with her children, he would always say, "Oh, sister, you have a beautiful child there. Make sure you don't curse at the child. This is not good for their development. And you have lovely legs. You have a beautiful body, but cover that body. You're a queen, and one day a man is going to see you, and he's going to be attracted to you because you respect your body." I mean, they mothered the community. They didn't look at the women and say, "Oh, look at the way she's dressed." They gave them the education that they were getting from the nation, and they took the time to check in with the people and to see how they were doing. I actually was around Brother Sulaimaan a couple of years ago. We were at the Masjid, sadly at a janazah funeral service. And unfortunately, our funerals sometimes become huge reunions. So the brothers were so happy to see each other despite the horrible circumstances. And there was a circle of brothers there talking. And we were on 116th Street, and Sulaimaan, this soldier, you know, master courier, was standing off to the side in the circle with the men. And then some guys, you know, with the pants down and, you know, came up the street going towards Adam Clayton Powell from Lenox Avenue. And I'm standing back watching this. As the brothers came towards him, he pivoted out of the men's circle and greeted those young men and said, "How are you all doing? How are you? It's good to see you, young brothers. Do well." Gave them a positive word, pivoted back into the circle. The brothers didn't even know he left. But his habit for loving the community was so ingrained in him. When he saw lost founds, as they would be called, anytime he saw some young person. So a lot of times we pull away from the community, and I think letting these young men be invisible is a part of the problem, I have to say. When I think it's very, very important that when we see our young men, even if you think he's a drug addict, I mean, sometimes you have to be wise and be quiet. You don't know the circumstance. But especially, I mean, you're in front of the mosque. You shouldn't be afraid to say good evening or how are you? Or, so I want to say that environment, the Nation of Islam environment was, when people see it as Black nationalism, but that term can mean so many different things to different people. So the brand of Black nationalism that we saw in the Nation of Islam is not the same as the Black Power movement. And it's not the same as what a lot of people consider Black nationalism now. The Nation of Islam, Black nationalism was a foundation. The foundation of it was to protect the society, to protect the women and the children, and to educate ourselves. And the nationalism was not to separate just because we were Black. It was to protect us because we were being attacked. It was to say, if you won't let us have peace integrated into the society, then let us have our own environment and leave us alone. So that's not really the nationalism that a lot of people associate with Black nationalism. That term has become a lot of different things. To the extent, language is very important. One of the things that Imam Mohammed did is he sensitized us to understanding the importance of language. And when I was looking at the topic, I said, wow, Al-Islam, I remember very clearly when he told us to call the religion Al-Islam. He said, this is what the Quran says, Al-Islam, and he was very adamant about it. He had a lot of, I guess he had some detractors or people criticizing some of the changes, but I remember him saying, if I tell you to say it's Al-Islam, 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 you say, he was just so strong with that, insisting that we say Al-Islam. And he kind of eased up on it. In other words, not being so insistent, understanding that people are used to hearing Islam. But he wanted us to be very clear that he was not teaching Islam. He was teaching Al-Islam. And we know that Al-Islam is the religion of Abraham. We know that, this is when I would teach Sunday school, I would always, my trick question to the children is, who's the founder of Al-Islam or Islam? Who is the founder? And the young ones who didn't know me would always say, it's Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad is the founder. And I would say, if you read the Quran, you will see that the Prophet Abraham is the founder of Al-Islam. And that is really I think the critical piece in discussing Black nationalism versus Al-Islam as the source of healing for the family, for the African-American family, and for every family. And I think that we have to really see Al-Islam as the framework to protect our nationalism, because nationalism has its place. If you look at nationalism as an ethnic pride, and Allah, God says in the Quran that we're to compete as in a race towards everything that is good. So I see it kind of like a family picnic where you have all your cousins come and everybody might have their special dish that they think is going to really, excite everybody at the picnic. Maybe I make the best potato salad. You all are going to love my potato salad. I think African-American nationalism should focus on an ethnic pride that does not take away from the dignity of any other people. And that's very difficult. And that's what Imam Muhammad, in my opinion, spent a lot of time doing, bringing us from this extreme sensitivity about our Blackness. I think the Nation of Islam was very successful in doing that reverse psychology and bringing us to that sense of, we're Black and we're proud. We're not inferior, because we were so indoctrinated with inferiority. But I think Imam Muhammad was very, very determined to level that out and to bring us to a place where we could see our Blackness as a source of ethnic pride, and not so much see it as a source of developing, building a model community based on our Blackness. So I'll give you an example of how I interpreted Imam Muhammad's work. I asked my son, if you had the opportunity to move to a wonderful, wonderful island where all the resources are going to be on this island for your enjoyment, you have the ability to pick one of two islands. One island is going to be all Black people, all Black people. It's Black people from all over the neighborhood, from everyone Black is going to be on that island. Or you could be on an island, the second island is there are going to be people from every ethnic group, but they're all going to be God-conscious people that have integrity, that believe in doing good by one another. And you can't even be sure how many Black people. You know there got to be some Black people on there because you know you have uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters that have that character, but you don't know who it's going to, it might not be everybody. Which island do you want to live on with your family? And I've asked this question about to some adults, and they're like, and people that tend to be Black nationalists, and they're like, there's no question about it. I'm going on the island with the good people. I don't want to be on the Black island because Black is not enough. I picked a quote where Imam Muhammad said, we are dividing ourselves. That this Black terminology is the wrong rallying flag or banner for our unity. And that's not a quote that he made to the community when he became the leader of the Nation of Islam. That is something that he said that he was teaching the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he said his father allowed him to teach that message and did not interfere with it, even though the Nation of Islam was the group that kind of coined the Black identity. So Black power or Black nationalism, I see as, depending on how you interpret it, I see it as a good thing if it is going to bring us to loving ourselves, loving our culture, developing culture that we can share with other people and say, look what we brought to the picnic. Oh, I may not use picnic because I know that word is sensitive now, but look what we brought to the party. And we see that you brought something too, and we're going to enjoy that. And that's something we have a lot of trouble with. We have trouble acknowledging sometimes the value that other people have brought to, like you'll hear about, we have so many inventions that African Americans have made that the world doesn't even know the influence that we've had on modern technology, modern culture, because so much of that has been attributed to European Americans. But then when you do see European Americans make great contributions to technology and moving humanity forward, you have to be able to say, look what my cousins did. Wow, that was a great contribution to humanity. Look at the evolution of communication. We have to evolve to a point where our sensitivities are not so enormous that we cannot really supervise the development of the human family. So I look at New Africa. I think Imam John Nasheed from Mount Vernon had said at one speech, it caught my attention. He said, well, I think about New Africa in the sense that all human beings are from Africa. So if there's going to be a new Africa, that is going to be a renewal for the human family. And if we are the ancestors or the inheritors of the African identity in America, having the most diverse DNA on the planet. We as a people have the most diverse. So when Imam Muhammad said we're a new people, he wasn't just talking about because of our birth on the slave ship. It is actually a physical fact that we are the carriers of DNA from all over the planet. We have the most diverse DNA in our bodies. So we are the ones, I believe, in my opinion, that have the mandate to study this Abrahamic, we say millah, or the method, I'll call it method, to see how can it heal God's servants. And when I look at the extremes that we've come to, especially in America, this polarization, I'm always shaking my head and saying, my goodness, we have the solution for this. We have the medicine. We're the ones to bring these two sides together because we have that sensitivity of that nationalism and that not being afraid to speak out and to march and to stand up for what is right and to speak truth to power. We also have a sensitivity to wanting to preserve old-fashioned. I tell people when some of my friends ask me, what is Islam about? I use American language to speak to, not just to give them, it's 5 pillars, sometimes you lose people when you give people, it's the 5 pillars, it's faith. I tell them, if you really want to understand Islam, it is that old time religion. I tell them it's that old time religion. So now they realize it's a spirituality that we had long ago. And it's very simple. And it's tied into loving God and old-fashioned principles. And it's not so far away because if you look 2 generations ago and shared with your great-great-grandmother, how you live, not so much the information about what Islam is about, but how your lifestyle is in terms of wanting your family to be together and so on, they wouldn't see, it wouldn't be anything new to them. So tying it together, the Black nationalistic movement, if when you say that, if you're talking about ethnic pride, it is a part of Islam to me. It is something that Islam encourages. The Quran, God says in the Quran that don't think that the family of believers is closer to you than your blood relatives. So you're supposed to keep your family ties developed. We know that we're supposed to have a sacred respect, along with having a sacred respect for God. We're supposed to have a sacred respect for our blood ties, our family ties. So that Black nationalism that respects that we have these blood ties with our people, we should honor that. We should respect that. We should cultivate that. And as Muslims, I think we should cultivate it in a very unique way, like those couriers did, not judging people so much based on you're Christian or you're 5%er or you're Hebrew or you. Let's figure out how to cultivate the family ties. Allah says, keep those family ties. We shouldn't think that because we're Muslim, we are better than our non-Muslim family. God really addresses that. And that is the nationalism that I think Islam wants. But if it is a nationalism that excludes the responsibility for ethics, for integrity, for, I'll say that Abrahamic inheritance that gave us the law of Moses and gave us the ethical approach of Prophet Isa, peace be upon them. Though that is our inheritance. And I think personally, I believe, I kind of look at it as I call it the black trap, because I think that there's money in keeping African Americans in the black trap. And by that, I mean, when you are constantly making all of your decisions about progress based on your blackness, and not really using ethical principles to determine how you construct your society, then you're going to be trapped off, because you're going to wind up with the same problems. If you don't address the structural problems, the infrastructure of society, of the society that sadly slavery created, you're going to have the same problems. The thing about slavery is it robbed us of the ability of creating an ethical infrastructure for our society. Imam Mohammed said that they would allow you as a slave to create your own excellence as an individual. So if you were a blacksmith, you could be a great blacksmith and everybody could come to you and so on. But two or three of you couldn't come together and start talking about that, moving that forward. Your social bonds were disrupted. And anytime, in Islam, anytime you have three people together, you have to create a government right away, automatically. You have to create a social order. And we know that our legacy from the Islam is that we have to have a constitution. There has to be shura. The government comes from that. So there, not only can't you read, they don't want you to read to learn about government and learn about social order and learn about how this society creates order. Because if you learn how this society creates its order, then you can create your own order. Even though you're not in Africa, you can't base it on what you did in Africa. But if you learn the laws of this society, then you can create your order. And so you weren't allowed to read to do that, but you weren't allowed to create any kind of social grouping that would allow you to create a government. So now, if that's the Black nationalism that we're talking about, where ethical people come together to create a progressive social order that will benefit our people and will also is not designed to harm other people. I had somebody text me this week, and the text said something like, we should make, on Juneteenth, we should make all white people work for 16 hours for free. And it was a joke, it was a joke. And I said, that's really tempting. I said, there's something about that is really tempting. I said, but, we would have to really figure out how to exclude the family members of the Quakers that worked on behalf of African Americans and established the Underground Railroad, along with African Americans, the abolitionists, those great people who risked their circumstances, and the great John Brown and his sons, and others in modern times who, were part of the going down south to register people to vote. So I said, it's so tempting to write that out of history, but that's what's happening. And we have to be very careful. As Muslims, we're not allowed to do that. But the current Black Power movement would allow that. And there are there are scholars, African-American scholars, they're not being promoted, but they're saying this is not right. We are restating history in a way that is, inaccurate. And we're doing our children a disservice. And you know what? The interesting thing is that many of these whites who are ancestors of these groups, they let us do it. They feel so guilty about what has happened to us. You don't even hear them saying, yeah, but wait a minute. My ancestor is the one that funded Frederick Douglass's work and that protected Harriet Tubman. And you all are not telling the whole story. They are silent. But it's up to us to say, no, we cannot pretend that our freedom was without the help of many people of other groups. So the Black nationalism that we should want is a Black nationalism that is framed by the Islamic sense of justice, fairness, one humanity, I was excited when I really started understanding Imam Mohammed, because I realized this man, he used to call himself the Muslim spokesman for human salvation. And I realized, thinking about all the things that my mother had taught me about slavery and just trying to piece together how we were going to make it in this crazy system, I realized that we had a leader who had the answers. And when he said al-Islam, he was making it very clear that he was not going to give us the version of Islam that the world might be used to, that he had been blessed with the ability to read the Quran and to read the culture, to read the society, and to give us exactly what we needed in this modern time to heal. So I'm going to stop there, because I want to give you an opportunity to talk and invite some comments or questions about, the things that I've said.
I thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was a lot of things came to my head, but I love the way you mentioned, which I think is with a lot of ideologies. The original idea of Black nationalism or nationalism period to where it went to. Like I said, what was stripped. And as I thought about, I made that connection between. I remember you were on a program and you mentioned how, and I thought about it. I was like, wow, she wasn't the only one. But you said when you were growing up, the idea of being a mother, housewife, all that stuff was like, wow, that's a big thing. And then you said, but then later on, it wasn't. It's like, okay, that's ridiculous now. Now let's do this. So like I said, so the original identity of the woman, not necessarily you can't work, but it altered because something affected it. And now, like you said, the pressure was like, hey, I want to be a wife. What? You want to be a doctor, so-and-so too? Oh, that's good. So you couldn't be yourself. Same thing, I realized with African-American, like you said, the Nation of Islam ideology was more be your original self. Your original self was, even though it was shrouded, the focus was, like you said, the protection of your original self, the unification, the social order, the social gathering, the ethics, the principles that wasn't I don't want to say famous, wasn't big anymore. It wasn't like in the society, it's not that big of a deal to do that anymore. So we were kind of like, in a way, the society, certain parts of it was trying to antiquate those parts of us that really other ethnic groups accepted. This one thing people understand too, as much as they criticize the followers of Imam W.D. Muhammad, us as and really it was African Americans following an African American leader. That's the big thing it was. They just had a different religion. But the biggest thing about how we got credit was the fact that we were a group of people, African American, following one of our own, like they do, which is natural. And we said, oh, they're back being natural. Somebody told me there was a report. I'm not sure this was in the government, but it was in a police report had it in one of the most notorious precincts in Harlem. They literally had some of the most productive and respectable citizens of America are the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So now they saw, even though what we were saying again, and it only came out when they did something against us. Like you said, they saw how we treated the women, how we treated the men, how we treated the children, how we started our own. Basically, again, what they saw under a new idea of religion was basically, like you said, themselves. The Irish could see themselves not as a black person, but hey, we do that too. Mm-hmm. The Chinese, they saw, oh, we do that too. And they saw, we didn't say, hey, you know what? Could you be a part? Because they don't do that. When they set up Irish neighborhoods, Italian neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods, Chinese, they don't ask for you. And they shouldn't, because it's naturally, you grow up, like the man said, everyone came to this country, came with their own government and their own reality. So they set up their situation, like you go to Chinatown for a long time, and even the Jews, there was no English. You didn't say, hey, why don't you put English? But you went in there, said, wow, let me go shop here because something about them attracted you to that. They didn't have to change anything. Because they were allowed to keep their human sensitivities. So same thing with us with New Africa. Like the Imam said, New Africa. He said it was Imam said New Africa is the ability for us to have Islam, develop al-Islam with our own hands. So, and Imam said, why should we deprive the world of what al-Islam looks like with African Americans? With, like I said, with that ethnic, ethical, and those ethics and those principles. So, it's like you said, the reality of what Black nationalism went into because of outside forces, and like the Imam said, it basically became the opposite of white nationalism. You know, I'll do this because I'm Black. Like you said, I can't focus on having a reality of just being African. Just like if Asians or Europeans were just focusing on their ethnic reality without their human reality, it wouldn't work. It works because they're doing it on a human reality, but they don't have to say it anymore. That's one thing we have to understand too. When they got here, they had to say it. Hey, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. Now they don't. By the time we get it, it's like, you know, what are y'all talking about? You keep bringing Black up. Yeah, because now we have to say it now. We're trying to get to the human reality, not copy you, but get to where we don't have to say it anymore. It's just a natural phenomenon. And like you said, yes, al-Islam comes to give you that way of doing it. That's what I like. This is my interpretation. The way you said it is like al-Islam has the logic of how you can start your own neighborhood. And even in our somebody asked me, it's weird. You said about the two islands, and somebody asked me about a neighborhood, and like you said, depending upon your mindset, it would depend upon what you would choose. So somebody said, you know, would you like to make? I don't want to live in an all Black neighborhood. I want to live in an integrated neighborhood with everybody and so. And I said, what's wrong with all Black neighborhood? Well, you know, I said, I'll freeze it. You're telling me the Black neighborhood can't have the same thing that this neighborhood has? Well, I said, it's okay that you think that way because that's what society told you to think like. When I say I want to move it to the neighborhood, just all us, I mean, I'm not saying what I really mean. I mean the same ethics, the same morals, the same. Nobody wants to move into an area with their own group if crime is the gist, and if crime is the big thing, if criminality, they won't tell you that, but it's like, but they'll tell us. So I said, look, the neighborhood I'm thinking about is all us. Now, I know what I want in that neighborhood. You may think I'm looking at something different, but I'm talking about my neighborhood full of the same thing that is a good neighborhood. Like you said, how they like old time religion, because old time religion was Black Wall Streets, Black communities. They were all African American, but they had a sense of ethnic pride, ethics, like Imam Mohammed said. He said the original, and I didn't know this to the Imam said it, the original Nation of Islam were more spiritual and God conscious than when it got to the late 50s and 60s. I was like, I didn't see the difference in my mind, but he did. The business idea kind of changed us, but it shouldn't. Like you said, we should know how to do business on an ethical front, to where if I'm doing business with you, whoever you are, I'm going to treat you correctly. Like you said, how the Muslims spread by business ethics. There were different kinds of Muslims, but the business ethics stayed the same. And that's what I realized as I'm listening to what you're saying. No matter where you went with the Muslims, well, most of the places, it's the same thing. It was the same business ethics that you could find. They don't steal. There's no interest. They don't so. They're all like this. What makes them all like this? Al-Islam. Oh, wow. So my group can be like that too, if you keep the business ethics. Oh, wow. Okay. Like you said, it's not strange. It's natural. But just going back to the point where you said when you grew up naturally wanting to be, because you saw that in the community as a nurturing mother, but then the outside society just put in their reality, and your peers, like I said, you didn't change. Well, everybody had to change, but I'm saying you saw this strange. Like, why are we changing from this to this now? But there's nothing wrong with this. But the society's, so now you're trying to balance this with this, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work out, unfortunately, because it lost its way. But I did have a question about Juneteenth. Okay, you have people saying Juneteenth is just, I think it's picking momentum, is just a symbolic holiday. It's another, what do you call that? Not an appeasement. Like, it's almost like, we'll give you this so you stop crying. Juneteenth is not that big of a deal. Hey, it's a holiday. You got it off. That's all. It's not a big deal. Okay, move on to some other holiday. What do you see? And I don't know if you've heard what Imam Mohammed said about it, but what do you see Juneteenth as, or what should Juneteenth be for us as a people? From your opinion, what should it be for us? What should we be doing on that day? How should we celebrate it? I'm asking different people, but what do you think that should be as a, holiday for us? Or not holiday, what do you call it? I don't know if you use that terminology. A freedom day. How do you see it as?
So I've heard the same thing, and I think there may be some truth in, if you look at the political environment that we're in, there may be some truth to the fact that it is not, if you understand the way the Republican Party ordinarily functions, it is not normal for them to unanimously endorse something like Juneteenth unless there's some economic benefit. However, we're in unusual times, and I do think that it's possible that it has been given up as a political appeasement. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is something that is wonderful. You know what I mean? Just because that's why they agreed to do it. God put them in that position where that was a good strategy for them. But it's great for us, and that's what we should focus on. It is a day, I think Imam Mohammed said, for us to focus on our excellence.
Right.
And so it is a day that we can focus on, how do we reset as a society after slavery, not just as African Americans, because what wasn't done after the end of the Civil War, there was no healing. Reconstruction created a worse situation. And so Juneteenth is an opportunity for healing for our people, for commemorating the struggles of establishing the citizenship of everyone in this society. And it's an opportunity to heal. And I think one of the things that as Muslims we should consider with Juneteenth is a great opportunity for us to present our form of ethnicity as African American Muslims, because the word Black has become very commercialized. So, there's like, even though people say, oh, being Black is not monolithic, really, there's a certain commercialized way of being Black. Well, this is the way, Black people do things. And they don't really consider this community of African Americans the African American Muslim community is so unique in that you can't say, we're liberal, we're conservative, we're progressive, we're moderate. We, in terms of political, we have sensitivities in every corner because we're constantly engaging with information from an ethical place. So I'm not just in the party I'm not just in the Black party. I'm always looking at things from an ethical perspective as a Muslim that's trying to always marry the law with ethics and God consciousness. That's how I see it. The foundation is the law. The mercy is in the ethics, because you can't just have the law without mercy. And I think when you think about what's this musical that everybody just loves so much, that was about this Frenchman that was being hunted down for this petty crime. Amen. Amen. Yes. So that's in my view, that is an expression to the society that we are now looking more at a Christian perspective, not just the law, because law was vital for establishing society and institutions. You could not get to where we are without the law. But now God sent Isa, Prophet Isa, to give us a manifestation of how you apply the law to human beings with human circumstances, with a human heart. And so now we look at Mohammed, peace be upon him, and my understanding of this is that he brings the two together, and we are bringing those two together under the umbrella of taqwa, which is God consciousness. So Juneteenth, to me, is an opportunity for the African-American community and the whole society to have a rebirth and a reset. But for us specifically as African-American Muslims, it's remember Black Family Day and how much lore we have around Black Family Day, right? And where the Muslims could step out and say, okay, now we're going to bring you into our space. So I know that at Masjid Malcolm Shabazz, they've been very successful at establishing some type of Juneteenth festival. That's really good. I mean, we need to do much more outreach with the community. But that's a beginning with telling the community, come and see what we're doing. And this is what we believe in. And this is who we are, because it's Imam Muhammad said, they don't know us. They don't know us. And we, I'm not going to, beat us up, because I know we've had a lot of pressures on us why we're not out there like we used to be. There's a different economic circumstance. And I just want to say, in terms of what you were saying about mothering, I had a Black, growing up, I had a Black or African-American pediatrician, our pharmacist. I grew up in St. Albans. So we had the stores, and, it was like Harlem was back in the day. We had a lot of African-American businesses. And there were professional women, but the economy was not set up where you had to have two incomes. You see what I'm saying? So now there's no choice. You don't have the choice of being a stay-at-home mom as an African-American with our economic circumstances. And then, people say, oh, the Black women, welfare moms, and all this stereotypes. But I mean, that's a hard life. We do not have those choices in the current economic situation. And it's not just suffering. It's, the Black community is not the only community that's suffering. Families are suffering because there's no one really able, unless you have certain means, to watch what's going on with our children, to monitor what's going on with the children. I have been in search of, when my children have gotten older, I've gone back to working part-time, because I found that as they get older, you need to be more present. Sometimes you think, oh, when they're little, you can, and then when they get older, then you can go back to work. And no. When they're little, that's when, in my view, and when they're little, you can have a little bit more freedom, because, if you have a good caretaker, they can get good care. But when they're older, especially in this society, that's when you have to have all hands on deck watching what's going on with your children. What time are you coming home from school? I used to spy on my son I used to tell him he wanted to play basketball after school. And I would say, you get out 3:30, I want to see your face at my door, at our door at 3:30. You get off 3 o'clock. And then once you get off and I see what's going on with your homework and stuff, then maybe you can go out and play basketball. So he would come home and he would, check in with me, and then I'd let him go play basketball. And I would sneak. I'd get in my car and sneak and go see if he was where he was supposed to be. I did that a lot in New York. He was in the summertime, he was in a camp, and he was taking I would drive downtown to be at that subway to see if he was going to be where he was supposed to be. But, that takes time. Who has time for that unless you have that stability? I thank God that I have a husband that has been so supportive and has provided that stability, but it's very, very difficult for families to do that sort of thing. So the professionalism is wonderful. I love to see our sisters become doctors, surgeons, scientists, whatever we want to be, we should be able to be. But we have to have an economic setup where it's not like essential. It's something that the family can do in a way that's comfortable. So that means that we have to start really, really, really establishing, economics.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. We're going to hopefully open. People can start if they want to text stuff, questions to us. My brother just remembered the quote of the Imam Muhammad said about what New Africa is. New Africa for him is an opportunity for us. New Africa for us is an opportunity to establish al-Islam with our own hands. That was the quote I was trying to get. Somebody was saying something about, and again, this goes to, I think the balance we have to find, like I said, coming from different ideas of what we did in Africa. Back to motherhood again. A sister, I forget her name. She was mentioning about how much women would help other women with things that we're not paying too much attention about. She said even when menstruation, raising children, it's like, because we're not, like you said, the good old time religion, economics and other things, other factors broke up our reality. Like you said about what Imam Muhammad said, everything came about individualism. So if you're in your house, you're going through administration or taking care of your children, it's just you. I'll call up somebody. But in a community, they would kind of know or come check on you. Hey, you okay? It became more natural. Like you said, and that's why other communities look more natural, because that they weren't stripped of that. They still had that. They don't broadcast it. They're just like, well, how are you able to? There's naturally things like, well, I don't think about it. We just naturally do it. It takes the ability to raise a child. Yes. Even when we're studying about al-Islam, we look at the time of the Prophet, the companions, and they bring up all these situations of how they operated. We keep forgetting they were all in the same vicinity. They knew each other. So it wasn't like, hey, I got to wait till the fourth Sunday to see you or June to see you. I see you every day. So it was easier for them to be more social. Like you said, justice was easier for them to administer because, like you said, I knew you. I knew you. I knew the Qadars. I knew the Mohammeds. I knew so-and-so. Rather than, well, I don't really know them. Well, who knows these guys? So justice was a little bit more, well, can I take his word for it? So, question. Okay. How would you see, because I didn't think about that. That's another thing you just brought up to me, because I don't have children, but the fact that you brought up about when they're younger, it's a little bit less hands-on because it's more natural. You're there. When they get older, especially because our society warps the reality, check to see if they're still natural. So like you said, that takes you out of your, who has time for that? It's just like, what would you say would be a remedy for that? Changing how it is now to where it could be back to more natural, especially with our young people.
Well, I think about this a lot. I think about this a lot. It's always on my mind. First, let me just say, I have to give some credit to Muslim women, Christian women also. I see a lot of the kind of support that you're talking about, despite this crunch of time and crunch of money. I'm amazed at Muslim women, how much they support one another through difficult times. I mean, that's what really made me fall in love with the community. I mean, I came, as I said before, I came into the Muslim community as a duty because I just thought the Quran was true. But when I encountered Muslim women who were just so dutiful towards each other, helping each other, supporting each other, being there for each other, in spite of the fact that the society was changing so much and it became very difficult. And I still see that. And I see that among a lot of Christian groups. And even though we see a lot of confusion and chaos, I'm seeing that a resurgence of that kind of love in our young people. You know, when you see them demonstrating and doing these kinds of things, it is a sparkle of the kind of community commitment that we used to have. So I see good. You know, I just want to say that I do see good. And I think that, you know, God is bringing about circumstances that is favorable for us to be more connected. In terms of the question, I think about this a lot. I think that it's very important for men to come together, even if it's in very small groups. And Imam Mohammed drilled down on this constantly, especially in his later years. He said, don't look for big numbers. If there are 3 of you who can come together with a similar common goal, interest, that is, you know, and then he quoted Margaret Mead, where she said, don't think that only a few people can't do, I'm not making the quote exactly, but can't do big things. In fact, that's the only way great things have ever been done. I'm convinced that these small clusters addressing these issues, especially among men, is the key to, you know, I want to say the key to the kingdom, but the key to moving forward through the enormous stress that's on the African American community. Neighbors are very, very, very important. A lot of times we are locked in so much fear of each other that we don't realize that even the worst person can be, you know, people can be reformed. And we saw in the Nation of Islam, people leave her heroin cold turkey when they saw that there was a program that they could really believe in. And I'm convinced that these small clusters of progress and also connecting with your community, your neighbors, is really the way that we're going to have to function. And I try to encourage women to, because a lot of times women, we get together, we have our little gatherings, and, you know, we're social. We love social stuff, you know, so we're having our little, you know, parties and things. But I'm trying to encourage us to create those venues for our boys, our sons and their fathers and their uncles and the brothers, you know, because they may not have the mind to throw a social event, you know, but if you set it up and you put you order the food, and, you know, they'll come, but they don't necessarily have the time or the social skills to set it up. So I think we have to be, and I think this platform that you all have created is a wonderful, wonderful beginning in this effort. This is exactly what we need. I would like to see us also connect. When I say connecting with our neighbors, I mean finding out how people are doing that are not in your group. You know what I mean? Talking to people, you know. I believe there's some things that I think could really heal our communities literally overnight. One of them is if we just decided that we're going to start speaking to our young people. Just, that's it. Just say, good morning, how are you? Have a good day. Whatever. Just making some eye contact and saying, hi, how are you? Or hi, young man. Keep up. You know, I was out with my son a couple of times, and I was in New York a few weeks ago, and twice, African-American young men, I mean, they're young to me, they look like in their 30s, said something to my 16-year-old, don't grow up too early, you know, listen to your parents. That was so valuable to me. That's that village, you know? And just like I described how Musala saw those brothers coming, and he just pivoted out and said, hey, how y'all doing? You know, stay strong, have a good day. A lot of these young men didn't have fathers. They're not used to having an older man bless them and acknowledge that they actually are not ghosts. You know what I mean? Because when you're a ghost, you can pick up a gun and shoot someone and not think about it. You know, when you are human and aware of your humanness, it's a little bit harder to do those kinds of things. So that's one thing. The other thing is keeping our neighborhoods physically clean. Like, I would love to see all of the mosques and the churches and the temples have a day a month where all we do, we don't even have to exchange religious information. You don't have to have any dialogue. Just say this day out of the month, all we're going to do is pour out of these big buildings and clean up the street and maybe have some refreshments, some lemonade. You don't even have to make it a whole bunch of food, just some lemonade and some chips, and say hi to your neighbors. Those kinds of little things. You know, our prophet, peace be upon him, said, he's reported to have said that the shaitan has given up in harming you or tricking you in big things. So be mindful of the little things. And women are really good at monitoring little things. But when you take the women and put them all in the workforce, who's monitoring the little things that really keep the society stable? You know, where's that grandmother that's sitting on the porch and she's saying, you know, I'm looking at your daughter and it seems like she's talking to a lot of boys, and, you know, to let you know, because mom is in the nursing home. You can't have mom home because you can't monitor her because you're working. So there's so many dynamics, and I think we're in a really great time to rethink these things. The money is changing. You know, the way we see value for wealth is changing. There's a huge transformation happening in the world. So as I said, this platform is really important. I think we need many more of these, but I think we have to couple these platforms with actually getting out and just talking to people, and not so much trying to talk to them and tell them what they need, because we don't even know what they need anymore. We've been so separated from our people, this is my opinion, that we need to just say, how are you? How are you doing? What's going on with you? The things that are going on with our girls is terrible. The suffering that a lot of our little girls are going through, the things that are going on with our boys too. And I think if all we do is just resensitize ourselves to how are we doing, then we have more ability to provide, to look into our sources, into our Quran, into our example of our prophet, and using the strategies of Imam Mohammed. A lot of people talk about his language, which is great, but he took strategic moves all along on how he wanted us to make progress.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Like you said, I mean, something Sister Khadija said on one of our programs. She said about the Imam, you know, how naturally he was. Like we're trying to like learn it and get it, but it became, after a while, his sincerity just became natural. He doesn't have to, like, I put this foot in front of the other, now smile. It's, we're still at that. Most of us are still at that point. I always tell people, I have like favorite families in the community, and y'all is one of the most famous favorite families. I think when I think about y'all, especially you and your husband,
favorites.
I think about favorite. I think about the hadith of the Prophet I learned like 5 years ago, that he said, and I'm not saying y'all do this, but I'm saying just because natural. The Prophet wouldn't step out of his house unless he had a look on his face of like pleasure, like pleasing. Not like, hey guys, but like a regular, because like you said, he knew the environment, the community, but he also, like you said, how they saw him. Like you said, he knew them, how they were, how they responded. They weren't, they could be reformed or whatever. And just to see somebody smile or have a pleasant look on their face, I mean, I'm not saying bad things about New York, but New York, you have to have that. I remember when I was younger, it's like, you just finished watching television or some cartoon. Hey, you're a little black kid. Hey, I'm excited. Hey, step outside the house. You're a teenager, and everybody's like, oh, that's the look. What's up?
Right.
You can't go, hey guys, what's going on? Oh, you couldn't be as accepting as you want. So it's like, to see a pleasant face just changes your whole demeanor.
It's true.
Even if you're feeling a bad day, it's like, wow, okay, it's not that bad out here. It's not that bad. So like you said, I do agree. We should just ask, how are you doing? Because like I said, we don't know. And most people will keep a front until you say, well, how are you doing? I'm all right. No. How are you really doing?
Yeah.
And they'll break, and I've seen, I'm just, let's go by, that's one thing I love about your husband. He would always, I greet him, how you doing, but I'm okay. And he would lean in and touch the shoulder like, come on, I just said I'm all right. Here's the real problem. But it's genuine. He's just genuine. And people like, especially as a man, you just try to keep that in, but it's like, no, it's okay, just say it. Because maybe I'm going through it. Maybe I heard about it. Maybe I have a solution for it. Just be open. Okay, so-and-so. Okay, wow. And then you realize, that's not that bad. But like, you have to have more of that. But like you said, you have to be more vulnerable, more connected to your human reality. Like you said, here's how the Muslim African Americans do it. It's not spooky. It's not weird. It's just, they'll see. It's like, well, my grandmother used to do that. My father used to do that. So used to do that. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Like you said, be more natural.
Yeah.
Be more natural. Okay, we got a question, a statement. I think that there needs to be more emphasis on us as African American women embracing our roles as women and mothers, where we stop putting down married black women or black women who want to get married, that want to go back to being housewives, and holding it up with the pride that we used to have in other career women. We black women are suffering because we have started following white women's struggle issues, which is whatever white men do, whether good or bad, we just do because they can do it. And that's my sister brought that up. The point is, the point being, the emphasis, like you said, how you started off, wanting to just be naturally home, raising children, doing this. Like you said, unfortunately, now we have to because of the economy, but we have to, like you said, find a way to get back into that struggle, and not so much following what, even with, it wasn't Ida B. Wells, I think it was Ida B. Wells, with the white suffrage movement, even though they were women, their situation was different. Like you said, oh, we got to go back to work. We got to go work. We were always working. So it's like you said, there was a place for it, but we just jumped onto that bandwagon and said, wait. But we've always been working. Our situation is this. Yes, there needs to be a movement, but this is what we need to be doing. While you're doing that, we'll be doing this. If we need your help, we'll ask. If you need our help, you ask. But right now, the movement is different because our circumstances are different. Even though we're all in a situation in America where it's similar, everyone has their own individual situation where if we're not, looking at the whole picture, we lose our perspective. I remember it was like 20 years ago, they had on the news, they were talking to two family working class, but like CEO type people, most Caucasians. And they said there became a trend where the wife said, I'm not working anymore. I'm staying at home with the kids. And the reporter said, well, who's going to take care of it? She said, my husband got it. And they showed her talking about what she was going to do, what she's not going to do. And I was like, wow. She saw, because she said, I see that our children are losing that parental touch that they need to grow. They're going where they're not supposed to be going. The society is drifting them off. So I'm going to step away from my 6-point figure and go take care of the kids, but the husband will take care of it. Again, that's ideal, but everybody can't do that to that degree. But like you said, the natural phenomenon of the worker outside and the worker inside. The worker inside needs the worker outside. The worker outside needs the worker inside. And like you said, if we get back to that natural way and not being ashamed of, hey, I just want to be a housewife. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. You know, nothing wrong with it. You know, and if you want to be a career woman, that there's a balance between the home and the career. You know, society makes it so that that there can't be. Excuse me, they try to make it can't be. You're either one or the other. That's what I was trying to say. How would you frame a logic to where there can be a balance between the home life reality and those that want to go out and work, or that have a natural disposition to work outside? How would you frame like a balance? Because that's what I think you're saying. We need to find a balance between those two, even though it's tough economic times. And what do you think is needed to make that a reality, specifically for our women and our children?
Yeah. So I really believe that the foundation, again, would be when we have institutions, business institutions, that we can employ ourselves. We need housing. One of my sons was looking for an apartment many years ago. He was single, and he said, "I can't get an apartment because you have to be." I mean, he wanted to get married, so he needed an apartment for his him and his fiance. And he was like, "I have to be a single mother with children." Housing for young couples, affordable housing for young couples is not there. So that's something that should be that should be like a fundamental push in our religious order, is that we should be constructing affordable housing for young couples. And that will remove a huge economic burden if it's affordable, where moms, if they want to stay home with children, it's more possible. And then if you are coming together to create a business, so you might have a gift, let's say you're an artist, and you have the ability to create a business with your art, which is wonderful. But I would ask the brothers to think about taking your skill and your gift and your talent and creating a business that will employ people, not just the brothers, but employ the sisters. Because if you have the sensitivity to what's going on in your community, you will not just create a 9-to-5. You'll say, you know what? I know that there are sisters that need employment, and I'm going to create some 4-hour days for them so that they can have time with their families. You know what I mean? If you're creating, some artistic something, you can say, I'm going to have some part-time work available for families with small children. So we have to be creative and think about solutions, and the whole world is in this mode. So we have to really realize we are in a good situation to start creating infrastructure that suits the social needs that we have. Business life, if you're creating your own businesses, you're determining how many hours a week you want your employees to work. You're creating your own world. So when Imam Muhammad said you're a nation within a nation, It's not you know what I mean? It's not like you're marching on the street, you have your uniforms on and you're in the Nation of Islam. He's saying recreate, and I think the quote that you made earlier was the same thing. Create the life that you need. If you go to Brooklyn, you see the Hasidim. They're taking off at 5 sundown Friday. They're out of there. They're done. You know, because they have the life that they need to fulfill their obligations. I just want to say one thing about homemaking versus being a housewife, because I know people are sensitive to that. They say, well, I'm not married to a house. And I agree with that, because housework is not the reason for staying home. To me, this is my opinion. You're home for your children and to create the order of the home. The housework should be shared by every member of the household. Now, obviously, if your husband or anyone, if the wife or the husband is out 10, 12 hours, they shouldn't have the same burden as someone that's home. But a lot of times the housework is enormously challenging for women at home. So we also have to think about getting that kind of support for the home life in terms of housekeeping, keeping up the home. My husband has, he loves order. Things have to be in order. And I come from an environment where I can work in chaos and order. I love order too, but I can work in chaos. He can't. He cannot work in chaos. And so he has a more, like I was a little spoiled growing up with my grandmother. She did all the laundry, she did all the housework. She just, you know, and I just had my little room to keep clean. I wasn't involved in any major housework. My husband had to teach me really how to do some of these things. And he is, I mean, this man, I hate to I don't mean to focus on him, but I have to say, Allah blessed me with a very fine partner that he would, you know, he was a supervisor of his job in New York. He'd be out of the door, I don't know, 4 a.m. or whatever time that he had to be at his desk at 7 a.m. And he had stopped driving, he had to take the bus. And then he'd come back home. And then if he saw that there was dishes or laundry or something that needed to be done, he would jump right in, no questions asked and no complaints, and tell the children, you all should keep your room clean. But I'm just saying this kind of team effort is necessary because we don't have the money to hire nannies and housekeepers and so on. We don't have those resources. So we have to be, you know, all hands on deck while we're figuring out the infrastructure that will keep our society stable.
Like you said, we look as Muslims, we look at Muhammad, the Prophet, peace be upon him,
Yeah.
as the most natural person. So whatever the Prophet does, I realize this too, whatever the Prophet did as the Prophet is what real humans do.
Yeah.
We can't say, oh, the Prophet did this. Whenever we say that, that's the model for all humans.
That's right.
Like we said, we look at, he did housework, he cleaned house, he helped someone, you know, he helped out in the house. And the one thing that always kind of, I don't know if it amazed me, but as poor as everybody was then, and they were poor, I always read, and his wife had help, his other wife had help. I thought they were poor. They had people working with them.
I think about that too.
Like they're poor, right? How do you get help? So something about that order is like so. Like you said, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
I know you're gonna call me on the show. Yeah, white women love her. Anyway, whatever. You should all love women. I'm just saying that the housework, like you said, because we were younger, we all, as my family, we all did almost everything. That's why I could do everything. I'm not a good cook, but I can do everything else. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot. And just to say, okay, if you're home, you're going to do all. I'm thinking about if we just sat and thought about. I know there's a running joke about the woman added up her bill about how much work she did and what the person owed at the end of the work she did in the house, how much the person owed her for doing the work. But I'm like, if I'm thinking about all the work that she did, That's every day. That means even on the day that I'm off, she's still doing and you're not doing. There's something wrong with that picture.
And you know,
sorry, go ahead.
And you know, I think they say it was something like $250,000. But I want to backtrack a little bit to the fact that that social pressure that is on men when they advocate for women. We have to do something about that because that's not Islamic. So like if you like just now when you were like, well, I know brothers might say I'm advocating for the women. But what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? That is our prophet. They said that the prophet loved to talk to the women. He preferred their company. Meanwhile, this was a man who was a diplomat and he was a general and he was the prophet and, but he loved the company of women. And I think that there has to be, there's they talk about toxic masculinity, right? So there's something that Islam has to heal this culture. And a lot of the problems with boys and violence has to do with this idea of masculinity that is not natural. And it is passed down as it's in the Caucasian community, it's in the Black community, and it is infectious and it has harmed our natural understanding of masculinity and feminine. It has really ruined the society. This idea of degrading the value of women and making it something that is to be admired, to not be influenced by women, or you don't want to be influenced by your wife, or he listens to his wife, and so on and so forth. And this is, this culture is so sick. It is so sad and so sick. And I thank God, I thank Allah for our prophet, who was a natural man. And he was influenced by truth and by goodness and by what was right and what wasn't right. Not so much, whether it was coming from a male or a female. It was about what was right and what was best and what was most pleasing to God. And I think that this is something that's very, very, very important for our men to pass on to our sons, because if they don't, our sons will not be ready to marry. If we pass on this idea, especially women are evolving socially, women are advancing and seeking more and more respect and being, valued. And if they can't, feel that among their own men, we're finding that more and more African-American women are saying, we've tried to support our men, but they're not feeling us. So we're going to marry, other ethnicities. And I can't say not to do it if we're not raising our sons to really value and appreciate women. And the same thing for our daughters. The same thing for our daughters. It's something that I think should be, if we have a school system, human growth and development and understanding the male and female brain should be a part of it. And I'll say this final thing on this topic is a dear sister who is a friend of mine, Dr. Lola Al-Uqda, mentioned to me years ago some advice after I had written the book For Sakinah. We were talking about marriage. And she said, my advice, she was a counselor also, is to be polite. And that was so, in marriage, be polite. And that was just so simple, but so valuable. I started thinking about all the trouble I could have stayed out of in my marriage if I had just kept that principle. If we, I should say, had kept that principle, even when you're angry, be polite. But a lot of times I was running on narratives or tapes that I was hearing from the older women in my upbringing about men and you know, what you had to do and what they're really about and blah, 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 blah. So instead of really being authentic and polite and vulnerable in speaking about the things that were bothering me, you come from this kind of, you know, the battle. You're in the battle. You're only 11 years old, but you know how to battle, right? You're 10 years old, but you know how to battle because you've heard your aunties and you know, you've heard the women talk about all the difficult things that have happened with the men. So it's important that we give our children more education on the differences between men and women, and also celebrate the good. Not to say that we have to be fake and act like everything is wonderful with your children, but be mindful that they're listening to you, and it's important that they know that even though they may hear some stories about that man that did something horrible to his wife, they have to know that there's also all of these other wonderful men they're doing such a good job. And we don't do enough of that. We don't do enough of celebrating the men and women who are doing wonderful things with their families and just kind of working through difficulties and keeping their families together and moving forward.
Okay, another post says, we as mothers, before I make a statement, we as mothers need to prepare our sons for marriage at a very young age, in that we constantly talk to them saying, when you and your wife do so and so in the future. Teach them, start getting a trade in the preteen stage so that they have something to fall on in hard times and to be independent. And put them around good men in our Muslim African-American community and the African-American community when we don't have an active dad. Yes.
I want to add to that. That is such a so many good points in that comment. Even when they have a dad, they should have mentors from among the men that are, you know, your dad is not going to be good at everything. It's not going to be able to teach you everything. It's important for boys to have mentors outside of their fathers. And you have to, of course, be mindful. You don't want to put them in situations where they're vulnerable. You have to set up the structure. You don't want to put your child in any situation where they're around men that are not trustworthy, that might harm your child. But we have long-standing relationships with families that we know are excellent families, and we have to make opportunities to have my son mentor with you, you know, in something that you're doing. And it doesn't even have to be something that they're interested in, but they have to see how men function, and besides their father, that there are men functioning in other areas, and this is how they're doing things. It's very, very important, that mentoring piece. And I agree with that in terms of preparing them early to think about marriage, and use language that lets them know that you encourage them to think about marriage. In this culture, very often they hesitate to encourage our children. We hesitate rather to encourage our children to get married. I don't know why. It's like they can be sexually active but not get married. You know, so that's a whole other piece that we can talk about some other time. But I think those comments are absolutely on point and valuable. I think you're muted.
I'm muted. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree 100%. And what I'm looking at, like you said, is specific language at an early age. You know, even like I said, language at an early age, in not just individual, but like in the society and the family, where it becomes, the language becomes so repetitive, becomes natural, like you said. I remember Imam Mohammed speaking about how the Jews take a lot of their children, and they basically show them around their neighborhood or what they've created, and they look at the things that their fathers have made, and the community has made, to where it's like, you know, the kid is just looking at things, but after a while it becomes like your courage grows, your esteem grows. It's like, oh, all this is mine, all this is mine, all this is mine. After a while, you have to keep saying it. He goes out or she goes out, this is all mine. I got no problem with it. at an early age, if we put that in them, it's like, okay, by the time they go out, it's like, oh, this is mine. Like Donald Trump would say, some of this good earth or else. Like Allah says, what I've established for you in the earth, I'm paraphrasing, is for you. It's not right now. It's not just for you. Whoever has the ability to strive and get it will get it. But if you're not designed or have that thinking pattern to go out and get it, then anybody can get it. Right. But like you said, at an early age, I think, again, is another topic. It really becomes like kind of personal of why young people shouldn't get married. It's more because I'm not gonna say my job. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'll say somewhere else. I heard them, older people saying stuff about, they're telling their children, when she comes in, make sure she does that, make sure she does this, make how much she gonna make, because it really was personal for him and his. It wasn't like, son, I kind of messed up, and where I'm coming from is ABC, and I shouldn't come from it at all. But I'm listening to him. He's really coming from a personal situation that's not beneficial, not general, and he's giving it to his son. So his son just picks it up, carries it, goes to his group. Hey, my father said, so when a woman comes, I remember on the train, I was like, man, a young boy was talking to his friend, and I think he had like a watch, some brand new stuff, and the four statements that came out of his mouth were, my girl bought me, my girl bought me, my girl bought me, my girl bought me. Like, what?
Yeah.
What did you buy her? What is like, but they're used to the women giving them, and that goes back to the old statement, what do you bring to the table?
Yeah.
What?
But
it becomes unnatural. Like, what do you bring to the table?
That's a phenomenon that I'm becoming aware of, is that we have flipped roles. So we have flipped roles, and when you see this gender confusion in society, I don't want to go down that road too deep today, but it's not just in attraction. It starts from a spiritual place. When you see it manifest physically in the society, it is a symptom of something that has been going on spiritually and going on socially and psychologically. So I was listening to the radio. I tried it when the teenagers are in the car. I'll turn on their radio station to listen to the music of their generation, and they hate when I do that. They turn it off. I'm like, no, turn it on. I want to hear it. That just brings a light into the situation that they don't. It like brings the sunshine into the room. Like, because I'm listening to what you're listening to now. And I'm like, oh, you don't even have to say anything. Just listening to their music in their presence. I was listening one day, I don't think my son was in the car, but the station was turned to one of these radio stations. And the young lady the song that she was singing was very pornographic. And it was a woman, a young lady, singing a song with I can't even say sexual innuendo. It was hard porn in the lyrics. And I said, wow, this is something that I would not have even heard from a man in my generation. I would not have even heard a song like this on the radio from a male, and to hear it from a young woman who sounded like she was African American. She might not have been, but it really hurt me. But what hurt me even more was at the station identification, the DJ, the recording said, they read the call letters of the radio show, and they said, we own the culture. We own the culture. This is a radio station that's in this market, the Philadelphia market. And I said, so they're dictating now the morals. If you own the culture, you own the moral life of the society. So there's much work to be done, much work to be done with our young people, and we need each other to do it. And I think that's the most important thing that I want to say. I see that our time is kind of winding down, but we need each other to do it. And as Imam Mohammed reminded us, we don't have to have huge numbers of people in our uniform, even though I think there's a place for the uniform too. We can talk about that too. I have some things that I'll be hopefully working on. I hope to be working on the Mosque Cares with some legacy historical projects that will include us, you know, wearing our uniforms and stuff like that. But I do think that we have to ask our men to work together and in small groups to create these small institutions that create economic platforms for our families, for income and for housing. And we have to commit ourselves to getting out of our homes and connecting with our neighbors. And you know, a lot of times you're thinking, you know, I'm Muslim, I have something to offer them. Sometimes they're the ones that have something to offer us. I had a new neighbor when I was living in Harlem, and there was a family with 2 children, and they were very tight. You know, they didn't smile, and they were moving in, and they were just always very tight. And my children kind of got tight, like, oh, you know, who are they? You know, they don't ever smile. So I went and bought a lovely kitchen set for them, and I wrapped it and sent them a card welcoming them to our block. And this family turned out to be the finest family, became like aunties and uncles to my children. When I had my baby, brought me the best soup, homemade soup that I've ever tasted in my life, you know. And one of the daughter's children made my daughter her son's godmother. But I'm just saying all that to say that we can't let these initial stressors keep us from really engaging with our neighbors. Especially, we know that our prophet really drove down on the importance of being good neighbors, and so much so that they said that the companions said that they thought that the prophet was going to say that the neighbor was going to be on the list of inheritance, you know, be an inheritor, because the neighbor was so important to the prophet. So I just want to say that we can't be out on the street with the Muhammad Speaks or the, you know, the Muslim Journal right now. I mean, we don't have the infrastructure to do what we did in the nation, but we certainly can begin by finding out how our neighbors are doing, meeting together with small groups of people that have similar interests, speaking to people, saying good morning, making eye contact and saying, have a good day, keeping your neighborhood clean, organizing with other religious institutions just to keep the community clean. That's powerful dawah. That's powerful dawah. And also you can visit the churches in your community. Imam Muhammad said he would visit these churches and go to the services, you know. We can become closer in ways that when we have these kind of connections, these small things, inshallah, will bring the community peace, bring us closer to the community peace, bring the families closer to family life, and really importantly, help the outside community, the non-Muslim community, to see that we are part of each other, that not to be thinking, you know, that we're some foreign interest, that we are really here to preserve the best. Imam Muhammad said we should be preserving the best of our traditions. We are here to preserve the best of the African American life, that old-time religion, right? I just want to say, because I see we're closing out. We just hit Father's Day, and I just want to give thanks and praise to the Almighty for the magnificent fathers in our society. I had a phenomenal grandfather. My father was a PTSD World War II vet, but a genius, brilliant man, and I thank Allah for him, and I thank Allah for Imam Mohammed, May Allah be pleased with him, who was a real father to us and to humanity. And to so many of you who are against the odds and against the tide, fathering children. And even though you're making mistakes, I promise you, you are. Just like I know I'm making mistakes, even though I have 7 children, I've been married 40 years, I'm constantly still making mistakes as a mother. I have to constantly reevaluate, ooh, should I have done that? So don't feel bad that you're making mistakes, because that's a part of life, but you're doing it. And I'm just trying to say that it is phenomenal to be a father and organize with other fathers and help them and share ideas, and let's keep it going. The kind of fathering that God approves of. We know that there's a lot in the Quran that addresses fathering, and there's even, actually there are more references in the Quran to fathering in terms of breaking the bonds of negative fathering, because fatherhood is such a powerful bond that it can interfere with your logic in terms of worshiping God. But if you have that taqwa and a father, that double bond, you are in a powerful position to influence society. So I just want to say thank you to the fathers. And I thank Allah. I already said that Brother Latif, phenomenal husband, phenomenal father. I don't say it enough, but I thank Allah for him. And I pray Allah will bless him and all of you to continue the good work that you're doing. And Hakeem, I know that you don't have physical, biological children, but this is fathering. When you take on the work of your leader as a student and take on his mantle to accomplish the mission that he had for serving humanity, you're fathering the society. So all of you, I thank Allah for you all.
Thank you again. Alhamdulillah. Definitely going to have you back in the show, probably either later this year or maybe next year. Definitely with some of the issues that you brought up, we need to definitely address. Mujahideen, we had a statement from Sharif Abdul Malik. Could you put it back up so I can read it just real quick? It's extremely important. In fact, I'll argue it's critical for our survival that we must follow the Quran fully, the life of Muhammad the Prophet ﷺ fully, and the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad fully. It will not fail us. This is our ark. This is our salvation. Agreed 1,000%. So again, we want to thank you. We're good 2 minutes. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. We thank everyone for their statements and their questions. Okay, one more thing about Sharif. Yes, the Prophet swept and helped his wives around the home, but what else did he do? We have to accept the fullness of our model example of Muhammad the Prophet. That's our salvation. What else did he do? He led the best military campaigns in human history. He established political education. He established one of the first constitutions. If our men really become like Muhammad, I believe most of our issues with black women would be gone. Let's raise our children to be like him more than anyone else. Agreed, agreed, agreed. Yes. Thank you again, Sharif Abdul Malik. We'd like to thank again our guest, Mr. Qadar. Inshallah, 2 weeks we'll have our brother Imam Sulaimaan Hamid, Imam of Atlanta Masjid of Islam. Thank you, brother Mujahideen Mohammed, and the New Freedom Exchange group with Bilal Hassan and Sister Marsha. I don't know if she's working today, but I know Bilal sent the information out. Thank you again, and we hope everyone has a very peaceful and prosperous day. So until next week, next week. Assalamu alaikum again. Thank you. Peace be upon you. I guess that's it. Yes. I guess that's it.
Don't work against us becoming Muslims if that's our choice. America is land of the free and home of the brave. And damn it, I'm brave and I'm free. And you can't. Don't work against us becoming Muslims if that's our choice. America is land of the free and home of the brave. And damn it, I'm brave. Don't work against us becoming Muslims if that's our choice. America is land of the free and home of the brave. And damn it, I'm brave and I'm free. And you can't take it away from me. I'm going to have freedom of choice. I choose Islam. I choose Quran. I choose Mohammed. I choose this religion for myself. And as long as my children are under my supervision and not of age to make their own decision, I am choosing Islam for all of my children. As long as my wife will like me, will love me, and she doesn't have to love me, as long as she respects me. I choose Islam for my wife. And that's my responsibility. And I hope you all feel the same way. Thank God we are free at last. We are free at last. You're not free when you're just free from physical bondage. You're not free until your mind is free and your human spirit is free. Your human spirit will take you where God wants you to go. And if you got that human spirit that will follow what God wants, your mind will be blessed by God to know how to get your body there. To get your body there. We're tired of being spooks in America or anywhere else. We are no spooks. We have a human body like everybody else. Don't tell me to accept God, immigrant Muslim from Pakistan and from Egypt and other places. Don't come over here and give me a life of Muslim ritualism. I had enough ritualism. I feel the genes in the, of my foreparents. They are in me. And I have a distaste for too much ritualism. I want reality. I want reality, and I want a place in this world. I want to obey God, and I want to get my share of this material world. Don't give me a spirit and tell me can't have a body. God didn't give me a spirit and tell me I can't have a body. God gave me a spirit, and he gave me a material body to house my spirit. Now give me a material environment to house my mind and my spirit that is African American. We want to see New Africa. We want to see New Africa Islamic theaters. We want to see skyscrapers go up, and we build them. We want to see shipping lines and trucking lines and transportation lines all over in our neighborhood. We want to walk outside our house, and we want to look at the products and the construction and the industry of our own people, Muslim African Americans in New Africa, on these shores. On these shores. That's our rightful inheritance as the creation of God. God has created us for this. That's our natural inheritance. And we will accept nothing less. Nothing less. They have Spanish Town. They have Chinatown. Damn it, get ready for African American town, Muslim New Africa. And I won't say it. I know you've been waiting for it. You've been waiting for me to say it. We cannot be stopped now.